Sairam. Hello, this is Ala again with you today, and today I wanted to discuss with you one very interesting topic, quite big, but I will do my best to jam it again in about 30 minutes, as I always try to do. Today I'm going to talk to you about evolution of a human race. And a human race, I mean not in a color of the skin, but in a body types. So historically, as below, as above. So in my previous video, I was talking to you about how cosmos developed from the divine, from almost nothing, a will, into the more sort of condensed, more thickening matter until it came to our reality as we know, that is matter, and that is fabric and thick fabric, material world. So the same thing happened with our evolution, human evolution, and it sort of divided in 5 stages, and we are at the stage number 5 of our evolution. So the first one was I'm not really know exactly the years and how many years or millions of years each step took. I was more focusing on the process, but I know it was millions of years that the process took. So the first one, first race out of 7 was pretty much initiated when our planet was ready, when our planet was more or less developed into a shape and was able to house a human race. The first, the initiators who came first, they were higher spirits. They were higher spirits, 7 of them. And it's again all written in the different legends, and you probably read them, but they were introduced to you as just a fairy tale, or just a story, or who knows what. But it's actually all really interesting facts of our evolution. And if you are interested, write me, and I can tell you what sources I used to kind of come to that conclusion. So anyhow, 7 race, 7 sub race, because each of them also had their own development until it came to the next step. So the first one, 7 spirits. 7 spirits came from Pitris that were living on the moon. Moon used to be our home, but it died ages ago. And I will do a different video about moon and earth and their connection to each other. Anyhow, those spirits from the moon and the spirits from the Venus, 7 of them came to our planet to start a human race. And how we looked, it was more like a clouds, sort of like a matter, a little bit thickener matter, very godly, very spiritual beings. They were just created of sort of the sweat of those higher spirits. It was just very beginning of our race. It was really hard to even call ourselves humans at that time. Plus, we didn't have that sort of a soul, the fire given, that would let us ability to think and analyze and process. We were just really godly. We were just here, and we were just still connected fully to our creators, and it was probably the purest form of ourselves back then. And we were like shadows of our creators, or the higher spirits, higher humans. There are two of them. The names, so the one type of the spirits were called Agnishwata. They are a little bit higher, one step, and they were they possess that holy fire that they would share in order for us to have a life. And then the other one was Barhishadi. They were not maybe sort of, they were more into sort of closer to the body type, I think, not the fire but the matter, and they were the builders of our shape. So when they start to work, our shape started to thicken. It took millions of years, and we were just like a blobs, holy blobs, I guess, that would be, in Hindu they call them chaya, which mean that a creature that fully spiritually developed but doesn't have that sense of ability to analyze and think and process. They were just like a clouds, would live on the top of the earth, and they could live in the water, could live underground. They were just really transparent, kind of moving around and being happy. I have to tell that the conditions on the planet were really harsh at that time, but it didn't matter to them because they did not possess body as we do have now. So they were able to live in those conditions, and Earth was pretty much still sort of boiling and developing. The only thing that they lacked at that time, it was the manas, which is the thoughts, and that's how the first race is different from the second. When the second started to develop again in millions of years, then we were more like an egg shape, thicken, and we were able to sort of like separate a little bit of our shape, like divide, to create a new sort of new human. It's sort of hard to explain, but it's, if you wish, like you can take a chunk, and a chunk will be right beside you, feeding from your energy, from your aura, and developing and growing. And when it grew, you sort of vanish. You don't die, you just vanish. You just break into elements, and that's, and you become sort of connected with Earth, and then your children do the same thing, and that's how. So it's more thickened body and has more sort of distinct form than previous race. And again, the harsh condition still on the planet, but it still didn't matter, the temperature, high or low, it was still okay, because the body was not fully formed. It was more spiritual still than material, than a matter. So it was still more like thin bodies that we have of our layers. I think it was about like 300 million years ago. The process took a lot of years, but again, it's hard to, for a person like me who is not into it, it's hard to know exactly how many years the process took. However, we still can find the evidence of the planet evolution and apply that to what we read in the legends and myths. The third race, you probably heard of them. They were called Lemurians. Lemuria and Lemurians, they started also with almost a shapeless, but they developed. It took a long time, but they developed into more or less body that we can actually identify with ourselves. And gods at that time, what we would call gods, but the higher spirits, our ancestors, they were here all the time. They were here to teach them. They were here to show them what's the plan, how they supposed to sort of grew, and what they supposed to follow on this planet, how they need to progress. And in this period, they were given the knowledge that they were practicing with them. The high spirits would be here practicing with the third human race and develop them as people. They were very tall. They started with almost 20 meters tall, and then as evolution progressed, their height was getting less and less until they came down to about maybe 6 meters tall. They really enjoyed sort of working on the progress. They were producing a lot of different sort of they were into agriculture, I would say, more, and they were working with gods into growing different things on the planet, so they would be able to survive when our body would take the shape as it is now. For example, the weed was brought to the planet. It was not, and it was pretty much brought in the way it is now. It was not started its evolution here, but it was brought to the planet as well as many different fruit trees. And that was all done so we can feel more comfortable here. So they were, and again, the land was always moving, was always changing, and at that time the Lemurians were probably where the Siberia and Greenland and all down the coast of South America, Australia, a little bit Hawaii. So that's where their home was. And it was sort of more kind of one land instead of sort of, it was not separated yet the way how we see it now. The Easter Island, like if you look into those figures that are there, those are creation of Lemurians, and thank God we dig them out, and now we can see the actual size of them, and that's what they left behind for us. They were good builders. They loved to carve their homes from like from the rocks and hills and mountains. So if you see some historical sort of gigantic sites with gigantic buildings. That's Lemurians, that's leftovers of their homes. And the only reason we see them today, because they were carved from the rocks and were not destroyed completely when planet was going through another change and having those disasters and earthquakes and what's not. They were already given ability to think and analyze. They already, at the end of their race, they already were possessing bodies. Sorry, my cat, his name is Carbon. He's always trying to be involved in my conversation with you and my in my videos. So apologize for him to be in here. The climate change, and before it was the one sort of season. It was summer all the time. It never rained. We had that kind of mist all the time. It was really pleasant, and it was warm and very comfortable. And there was no need for sort of covering ourselves or killing animals to get warm. But then it changed as planet was developing, as the Lemurians race was getting to the top of their development, and then when another change came down to the planet and the fourth season develops, then that's how it started. So they needed to build, they needed to cover themselves, and they needed to adjust. So technically, and same with the animals, they were adjusting to all of that too. And that's when they sort of started to their bodies started to go smaller. The pressure on the planet was changing, so the next generation were born smaller. Mind you, at this time, our body developed to the way that we would have genders and we would give birth instead of sort of laying eggs or just dividing ourselves. So with that came death, and they needed to sort of learn what the death is, because the body was not sort of going away. They started to analyze and see what's going on. At this time, they were very spiritual, and they still believed in the knowledge that they were given by higher spirits, and they were practicing that. And they were the first one who were given knowledge about the fire and what it is. It's one of the fourth elements on the planet, and they were able to use it. They were traveling a lot. They were making a settlement, and they would study astrology. They would study mathematics. They would be sort of doing their agricultural sort of experiments. I read somewhere that they actually the horse was created almost in their labs, because they were experimenting, and they were sort of working with different animals on the planet. And I have to mention that was where the huge sort of dinosaurs and different animals were around. So and it was not easy at that time also, and they had to sort of start fighting with them and protect themselves. and and that was started to be sort of harsher environment, and with the catastrophes, with volcanoes and floods, and they had to adjust to really serious changes on the planet. And I have to tell you that, for example, the Easter Island went down underwater twice in their period, but now what we see, it's the second time it's rise above the water, and we can actually see what was created by the Lemurians. They had a really dark skin. They were beautiful, almost like classic sort of face feature, some that you would see maybe in Ethiopia today, but super dark skin, beautiful people, very tall. Before they had to sort of give the way to the race number four. Yeah, number four. They were 6 meters high, and again, the catastrophe took them all down. Only few survived, and they had to start the new race number four, and it was Atlanteans. So again, the Earth was reshaping again and again, and Atlanta was in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. It was a big land, and that race, they were already not as tall, but they still were tall compared to us. They were 3.5 meters high, somewhere between 3 and 3.5. The skin was a bit lighter. The skin was brown to sort of brown reddish, and that's the time. That's the time where the knowledge was already sort of not forgotten, but was pretty much. But the faith took its place, so that the pure knowledge was really gone. But they still believed. They still knew that they were listening to the legends. They were listening to their gods, and they were respecting it very much. And the faith was really high at that time. They had a cult of the fire and a cult of sun, and they respected that very much, and they knew that we are sort of sons of the higher spirits. They knew that we need to respect that, and gods were with them and helped them to get the knowledge on how to survive in those conditions. They were given a system how to rule, what to do. They were really keen on building. I think what we have sometime in Greece or Rome or all over the Europe, you can find those huge, beautiful buildings, look like Roman sort of period, but I have my doubts that it was built by our race, because it was very sort of big in size. We didn't need that because we are way smaller in size than they are. So that was, I think it's a remain of what we've got to sort of inherit when Atlanteans were gone. Even just the fact that we cannot rebuild something that we see as a historical sites tells me that we are not as developed in this way as they are. We are more high tech. We are good in building computers, and this is what kind of makes us different from different races. So we are more technical in a way of sort of computer engineering and what's not. However, back to the race, the Toltec, that's one of the sort of sub-race of Atlanteans. They were, after them came Aztecs, and they inherited the pyramids in the South America, and it's not built by them, but it was built by their ancestors. So it's pretty much their grandfathers built that, right? So I think they just continue to develop into what we see now. But because of the size and because of the different abilities and different planet condition and different knowledge, we cannot do what they did in that matter. For example, Atlanteans, they were really good in science and psych. They were always into search of magic, not magic, but magia, we call it, and they were searching on ability of human being, use their psych power, and use the 4 elements to serve them. For example, they knew rituals to sort of call on a rain if they needed to, or change the weather, or heal with magnetism, they call it. They were able to heal with their energy, so they were more advanced in that way. We heal with tools. We are really good in surgery. We are good in fixing the body, but we are not as good in fixing the human being, the soul. We unfortunately not really believe in that today, and so that's why we are not advanced in this way. So that's how we are different from them. The capital they had called the Golden Gate. It was beautiful. It was really, really something that if you have imagination, you can just take yourself into the wonderful city where everyone is in knowledge, everyone is healthier and happier and more open. The earth sort of weather and condition are gentle, and you don't need to hard as much, but still yet they would do work on agricultural, and they would work with animals, and they would respect themselves, they would respect the faith. They had a lot of rituals to worship the sun and worship the fire, because they knew that we are not the highest sort of final step of the creation. There is something that higher than us, and we still need to work up to that point. At the end of their development, when they lost that and started to believe in the knowledge, raw knowledge, that we are the top of the pyramid, I am the final result of the evolution, then that's how trouble started. And at that point, they were so developed that they had those vimanas, which is the flying machine. They had ships. They had a lot of sort of weapons, and they started to go with each other, because everyone started to think, no, I know better. No, you don't have the right religion, or or you are not as smart and advanced as me. So people started to go at each other, and that's how they got weak. That's how they started to lose their faith, and they, instead of believing in higher spirits and higher creator, they started to believe in themselves, and that was the reason why their race started to go down, and to the point that they were pretty much killing each other until the earth could not take it anymore, and another huge event happened, and volcanic eruptions and earthquakes pretty much took everything down under the water, and only a few survived. And those few were chosen, those few were warned that the end of their race is coming, and they needed to save a few to start a new race. So when all this started, the black magic that they used was already beyond, and because they were given the knowledge of each element and they knew how to use them, those elements, and it's water, and it's air, it's earth, and it's fire. So they knew they, instead of using it into sort of creative kind of way and into constructive kind of way, they started to use black magic and started to kill each other with that. And because each of those elements, it's a godly element, it possesses tremendous power and ability as create, as destruct. So they pretty much killed each other, and planet could not suffer anymore and had to put a stop on it. So then the leftovers, a few of those that still had that light, that spiritual knowledge, the spiritual sort of growth in them, they were taken away to the grounds that would not be affected as much. And they went to Egypt, and they started all over there, and they built the pyramids, and the pyramids were built so they would keep those artifacts that very significant in order to sort of work with our four elements. They kept them there in the pyramid, and they did their rituals, and the rituals were to connect with gods, to get the knowledge, to get sort of directions on how we're going to go from now, what are we going to be doing. So this huge catastrophic events happen and change again the climate of the planet, and the new generation that were born already were our size. That's the beginning of the fifth race, and that's how our time on the planet started, and that this is how we started slowly to go up and develop as a human race. And what came out of it is more white-skinned people started to be born, more people with a yellow skin, like Asian type, Hindu type, Semites, and Slovenian. So this is Akkadian and Arab. So those are the sort of like type of people that started to develop their their nationality, what they call it now. And that's where we are right now. So it's very brief, sort of. I guess I did my best to sort of summarize in the process of millions of years into like 20 minutes. But again, I wanted to read you something. I wanted to read you something that I found in the Holy Bible, and I wanted to quote you a few things about what's written in the Bible itself about what I think is our race, our types, and types of bodies, right? So the first one, Genesis chapter 1, verse 26 and 27. So I'm going to just quote, and feel free to read it if you have a Bible at home. If not, you can find it in the library. Thank God we have many copies everywhere on different languages. When I grew up, I didn't have that privilege until I was about 25. So this is when I first time read the Bible. I didn't see that, but then next time when I read it, then I read it differently, and then I was able to see what I'm just about to tell you. So the first phrase, and God said, let us make a man in our image, after our likeness. And then 27, so God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him. So that's mean if you think of God, that as I said in my previous video, that he doesn't possess any shape or form. He is abstract. He is a thought. He is just a consciousness. So that's how the first race, when we almost didn't have anybody, we just were like a clouds pretty much almost. So that's, I made that connection, and it's written in the Bible. So the second quote I want to read. So here we go again. Next page, chapter 2, verse 7. And the Lord God formed a man of the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostril the breath of life. So if you ask me, this is totally different, because now the dust and the ground, so I think it's like more elements of the planet, chemical elements, that it was started to form and started to thicken, that now we have more of those now, and it's a physical matter, is it's a fabric that our layer of the cosmos, our material visible layer, started to sort of form, and this is what was used to form us. Okay, let's go down a little bit, verse 21 and 22nd. So here, and the Lord God caused a deep sleep to fall upon Adam, and he slept, and he took one of his ribs and closed up the flesh instead of thereof. And 22nd, and the rib which the Lord God had taken from man made he a woman and brought her on the man. So technically, the part of that body of one person was taken to create another one, and I already talked to you about that when we would sort of like take a little bit of our flesh and able to sort of grow this into the sort of grown individual already. So that's, I think, the race number 3, if you wish. And then from that, Millions of years later, race number 4. Let's see what happened there. Into Adam. Okay, sorry, I have to tell you chapter 3, and we're 21 and 22. So, unto Adam also and to his wife did the Lord God make coats of skin and clothed them. And the Lord of God said, behold, the man is become as one of us to know good and evil. So here is the race number 4, and also us. So at that time, we already got the skin. So that means that the process with that Atlantis, we've got the shape that we are pretty much in right now. So we got the skin. It's written the skin. So it's totally different from what I've read to you just now. So I noticed it was 4 different approaches to make a man, to make them different from the first one to the fourth one is a huge difference. It's from the light to the skin, and you have to read this. Not only read this, but I encourage you to go to the church or to the hall or to whoever you pray, whoever you belong to. Just go to your father, to your priest, and ask the question and just say, can you talk to me about that? What does that mean? Because I did that and I got the answer that was only one Adam and Eve, and that's it. So why they don't preach what's written in their own book of knowledge, I don't know. I don't know why they don't see this as 4 different stages of human evolution. I cannot be the only one who come to the conclusion. I know there are other people who notice that, and either they keep it to themselves or it's not the time for them to share it with others. I thought I need to share it with you. It's important because if we don't know this, then we don't know the rest. We don't know our history, and we don't know what we found and what we lost on the way to this point. Because when those spiritual beings of race number 1 were godly spirits, they were pure, and when they go down and they develop a thickened body that already of the a good number of chemical elements, and go down to the more thickened and shaped body, they lose the knowledge, and then slowly down they lose the faith, and so we end up having a religion that we don't believe in, because intuitively we think that something's not right, something's not connecting here. And definitely with the science and where the science is right now, I think it's a new way of inquisition, because they try to deny everything that they cannot see or touch, and that's why they actually take us away from the knowledge, take us away from being connected to our creators, instead of going back together. Okay, let's just dig out the most ancient scripts and let's translate them to different languages so people can read and understand and apply the science into it. And then we will find our way back, and we will be connected, and we will be happy. Because the way it goes now, that we don't believe in anything but the material matter, that my reality is what I can see or touch, that's not gonna give us a good outcome. This is something that we need to really take seriously and find our way to be spiritually connected. I wish you all the best, and until next time, Sairam, have a good day, everyone.